Go, 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 Indy, go, Indy, go, Indy, go, Indy, go, go. Yay! Hello, welcome to my channel. I just want to thank everybody for watching, continuing to watch, to subscribe, to like, and just to support. I really do appreciate it. This has been the start of something that for a lot of people may have been a long time coming for me, and just something that's new, something that I'm learning. But yeah, it's been the start of something. I wanted to take some time to talk about something else that has been a passion, a love of mine, and it's a particular film, what I may consider one of the most important films of maybe like the last, maybe five years, one of the most important films of the last 5 years that not a lot of people have seen and not a lot of people talk about. And that film is The Last Black Man in San Francisco. This is an independent film. It was written by Jimmiefails, directed by Josh Talbot, I believe his name is. And it's interesting because I would actually consider this one of the most important. It's a very important film as far as culture, especially in America. But I would actually consider one of the most important films for African Americans, Black people, Black folks. But a lot of us just haven't seen it. And a lot of us, there's like little niche pockets where people talk about it. Great movie. Great movie. This was the introduction. This was my introduction to Jonathan Majors, and I consider this probably his best role so far that he's done. He's been great in a lot of stuff that he's done, but the role that he played in this film as Mont Allen was one of his best roles. And also Tashina Arnold was in this, Danny Glover, Mike Epps. So there are some big Black actors that were in this movie, but it just didn't kind of get that steam. And I think that's because it was an A24 film and also a smaller film. And again, I feel like this movie is a love letter to Black cinema and to Black people and Black men. I feel like there's so many messages that come about in this movie. And again, that's even though Josh Talbot was the director, and this is a white guy, I feel like this was an important message for Black men, especially young Black men who are living in large cities. So what the movie is about basically is Jimmy, the main character. There's this house that his family owned, his father owned, and he has a certain understanding about this house. And so even though there is a couple that lives in the house, he's constantly going to the house and he's fixing it up. He's making sure things are taken care of. He looks after the garden. He looks after the outside. He paints it. And he just takes care of this house in San Francisco because there's a belief that he has ownership in this house because his father owned it and they lost it. And I don't want to give away too much of the story. I'm going to talk about certain things that may be considered a spoiler, but that is the gist of the movie. There's this house that is very important to Jimmy in this city of San Francisco. And so the main point to the movie to me, and one of the big messages, is young people, young men, people in general living in cities trying to find their way, and cities that have lost their way. So I kind of look at cities like New York, San Francisco, LA, Detroit, Atlanta, like Boston, these big metropolitan cities that have a certain identity, but then there's all this development and growth in these cities. And a lot of these cities end up looking at they look like carbon copies of each other. Like to me, I feel like Atlanta, New York, San Francisco, LA, they look like carbon copies. And I think we're going to continue to see that. I don't think there's anything wrong with growth and development, but at the same time, I think a lot of these cities forget their past. One of the really beautiful moments in this movie is the beginning. And there's something that says, there's a part where this guy is talking, it's a monologue, and he says that half of the city is in the past, half of the city is in the future. And I think there's a point where a lot of young people are getting lost, and they're trying to gain identity and gain purpose in these cities, and these cities don't even have an identity of their own. They've lost a lot of their identity. It's like a lot of people talk about New Atlanta versus Old Atlanta and the differences between the two. I think that cities can grow and develop, like I was saying, but I think they should never lose kind of track of their past and stuff like that. And again, there's just a lot. The way that the movie is filmed to me is just beautiful. It's like one of those things that you have to see, like the cinematography, the songs that are used. There's a really good, the guy who sang "I Got Five on It," the hook. He sings the San Francisco song. If you are going to San Francisco, I'm not sure how the words go, and it's like a beautiful rendition. Like I was listening to that constantly. Another thing that's interesting about this movie is the Mott Allen character that Jonathan Majors plays. This is a character that's on the spectrum, and I think a lot of movies have done black men that are on the spectrum, but I appreciate Mott Allen's character because he looks at a lot of different things in a way and a light that people wouldn't really look at. His character journey is very interesting, and I think it's very important. There's a very important message because he's writing this play, and you see how the play plays out. He delivers a great message in this play. He talks about the way in which likes and shares kind of convolutes reality. And I just thought that Jonathan Majors' portrayal is just great. The way that he portrays this person on the spectrum, it's not, it's typical, but then it's not typical at the same time. I thought that was really good. And that also ties into, there's a lot of great relationships that are displayed in this movie. There's no love interest in this movie, but this movie is about love, and that's the love for a place, the love for a person. And it's black males, and there's a lot of love showed, and it's masculine. Friendship, it's the love of friendship, it's the love of family, it's the love of it's loving people even though they may have done you wrong and hurt you. Because the relationship between Jimmy and his father is very interesting because there is a point where Jimmy understands something to be true, but it may or may not be true, and his understanding is different from what actually happened. And I think that ties into the idea that black people have of the stories that are told by the generation prior, and how we should interpret those stories, how we should listen to those stories, how we should believe those stories. And again, I thought that was another interesting concept. Even the friendship between Mont and Jimmy is very important because it's this guy who hangs out with this guy that everybody looks at as weird, even though he's on the spectrum. Jimmy sticks beside him for the most part. And then there's a young man named Kofi who kind of hangs out with, they're called the chorus. They kind of look at like, they're looking like the neighborhood guys, the hood guys, the guys that kind of, they're in the hood, they're doing stuff. Kofi hangs out with him. He's a little different. Him and Jimmy have a relationship that it kind of differs. But one of the most important things, and one thing I want to talk about, is the scene. You have to see it. It's one of the most powerful scenes I think I'd ever seen in a movie in like a long time. Like I was getting ready to cry in the movie theater. It's basically the scene where they learn that a character has passed, and Jimmy is asking his friends what happened. His friends tell him what happened, and the character basically passed because he got into it with somebody else. They had words, and he ended up getting shot. And so there's this moment where Jimmy is in this guy's face, and it looks like they're getting ready to fight. It looks like he's getting ready to take off on him, and the guy just starts bawling, crying. And the way that I looked at it was the way in which we as black men look at our emotions. And I'm not saying that in every moment we just need to be emotional, we need to push our emotions out every single time. But I do believe that there are instances where when we keep our emotions in check, we should let those emotions out because they are going to spill out anyways. And there's definitely times in this movie where you can see that the emotions are spilling out. Black trauma is something that is important, especially in young black men, something that needs to be talked about. And I believe this movie does a really good job of talking about it. So I highly recommend this movie for everyone to see, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. It's a very important film. even though it's directed by a white director, very important film, a film that everyone should see and everyone should talk about it. I think there should be more discussion. It came out in 2019, but we haven't really talked about it. I would love to have more discussions about it with anyone, friends, family, people that are subscribed, people who view this video. I would just love to have conversations about it. But yeah, this is one of my favorite movies. I think it's a truly important movie with important messages. And I think there's other messages that I could get into and talk to, but I'm going to kind of end this video here. And yeah, appreciate you watching. Feel free to share this. Feel free to like. Feel free to talk to me about this. I would love to hear what people think about this movie. Again, great movie. One of my favorite movies for probably the last 5 years. Thank you, and enjoy.